at the beginning and going through it, I didn't always feel strong. I felt nervous and afraid and unsure, and am I doing this right? And I think it was only in retrospect that it was like, wow, look at all that I learned. Look at the impact that I made.
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we explore how women are navigating our own unique challenges as we rise up in our careers, start our own business, and juggle work and family. I'm Diane Mocha, founder and CEO of the MomSub childcare app, and I talk to women leaders to find out how they have made work fit their life so you can learn how to do the same. Today, I'm here with Michelle Fadley, who has been building her career for 2 decades and currently serves as VP of Marketing for P1 Service Group, providing heating, plumbing, and electrical services. Michelle, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a fantastic opportunity to speak with you.
Yes, we want to hear about your story, and I understand you spent nearly 10 years as the president of the National Organization for Women in Illinois in a volunteer role, but with huge influence. So I want to start with that and hear about what made you decide to take on those kinds of responsibilities without pay.
Great question. I had a fantastic role model with my mom, actually, and she likes to say that she started with now herself when she was pregnant with me. So that commitment to giving back to something bigger than yourself and your own circle, I think has just always been instilled in me. And I got involved with the National Organization for Women in Illinois on a more county level in DuPage County first. And the opportunity arose for this president of the state chapter. And, of course, always a feeling of trepidation and anxiety with taking on something that feels so big. But I think when you are that committed to something bigger than yourself, you are able to remove that inward looking feeling of, nervousness and self-doubt, and just look at, I'm committed to the difference that this organization is going to make. And it gave me so much life and energy and a space outside of just, that 9-to-5 career, which can be fulfilling all in and of its own. But I think it just gave me an extra outlet and an extra place where energy was created.
Mm-hmm. And was it something that you heard about and said, I'm going to pursue this? Someone told you about this? Or was it someone where the organization came to you and said, we think that this is going to be the right role for you. We have this position that we want you to move into?
Honestly, a little bit of both. And I have found that to be true with most of the next level opportunities in my life. I may have had some interest in it and communicated that, but I don't know that I would have just stuck myself fully out there were it not for the support of the people around me and encouraging me and saying, yeah, we believe that you can do that.
Mm-hmm. And so you wanted to do something bigger than yourself.
Yes.
So what were some of the impacts that you think you had after a decade with that organization, and more if you started in another position?
Yes. Yeah. The proudest thing that I did as part of President of Illinois Now is I carried a legacy on from my mom. My mom, when she got involved with Now, back when she was pregnant with me, it was because she was fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment, putting women into the U.S. Constitution. And at that time, I was about 30 years old, and we still hadn't gotten there. And Illinois as a state was still a holdout, which is surprising. And so I got together with just a couple of other women, literally, and we co-founded the ERA Coalition in Illinois. And it took us 2 legislative sessions, but we were able to finally ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in Illinois. And following us was Virginia, which was the last state that we needed. So we have all the states that we need for the Equal Rights Amendment to now be in the U.S. Constitution.
Wow. So big accomplishment. And at that same time, you had a volunteer role with that. You were working full time.
Yes.
So tell me what was going on in your career and life at that
Yeah.
time when you took that on and how that evolved over those years when you were balancing those dual roles.
I was extremely fortunate to have a very supportive work environment. My boss knew what I was up to in the world. And, I would say he was extremely supportive, even if maybe he himself wouldn't necessarily go out there and fight for the ERA. He wanted to be supportive. So it was a conversation like, this is, something that I'm just deeply committed to. And there just being an adult conversation around, I'm maintaining my responsibilities, but if that looks like, maybe not necessarily 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the office because I need to hop to a, press event or whatever it is, no problem as long as I was able to maintain those responsibilities.
This
And
was like your baby.
yes, yes, yes,
And it grew and, right, matured and
it did. It was extraordinary. And, when I would talk about something that's bigger than yourself, to form something that started with 4 women and then gained, very quickly the backing of, the entirety of Illinois Now and all of our county chapters, because Now has always been at the forefront of that fight. But then for it to ultimately become a coalition of over 100 organizations in the state, beautiful, breathtaking, and a little surreal.
wow,
Yeah.
wow, fantastic. So let's go back a little further, even before that.
Yeah.
You've spent your career in marketing.
Yes.
Is
yes.
that something you always knew you wanted to do?
No.
Did you discover in college? Did you just happen into it? And did it grow on you and become more of a passion?
Yes.
Tell me how your career became so important to you.
Yeah, you nailed it. I, leaving high school, was absolutely clueless on what I wanted to do. And I decided that then the best route might be to just do a business major because you could do so many things with that. And I actually started with a dual major with psychology. But I ultimately dropped that, and during my business courses found that I just had a knack for anything in like the sales and marketing realm, and decided that was where I wanted to go. And, the creative side is really fun too. So starting my career in that, and this was before we were really sophisticated with so much of the ways that we can track marketing. So seeing it change and to go from a college student who quite frankly did not have strength in math, and to then become someone who is pretty good at data analytics and the importance that became in my career. And then, these different opportunities to grow concentrations within marketing, email, social media, digital, traditional, process development, data analytics. And I think just there ultimately is, I think the theme throughout my life, so much pride that comes from getting to create and see the outcome of something that you've created. And it is just that much bigger when it becomes bigger than you. So being able to, in my career, bring other women in and have, them have someone that they can really relate to in the workforce and understand some of our unique challenges as women in the workplace, has also just been really, really impactful for me.
So what do you think have been some of those challenges that you faced, whether it was early in your career, whether it was when you were trying to get promotions, or just having people understand you or feel like you fit in, that were different for you because you were a woman?
I could probably pull a list out. Challenges ranged from, the downright, sexual harassment, to just clearly being passed over for opportunities. And I think I even saw that happen to other women before I experienced it myself. And I think, unfortunately, when I first saw that happening to other women, I didn't take the right lesson from it. And what I mean by that is initially, what I took from that is, why should I work that hard and sacrifice so much when I'm going to hit that ceiling? And someone with less years of experience, less channel experience, gets to come in because they have this chummy relationship with the male boss. And it took me some time to realize that what I'm committed to is not doing this for necessarily, while, it is important to me, like promotion and salary and like all of those things are really validating, but it's ultimately validating to what I'm really committed to, which is that like creation and having it ultimately become bigger than just me. And it gave me a completely different perspective and a reason for doing what I do, whether it's in the workplace or outside of the workplace and community advocacy. So I think that really shifted and a new kind of, passion emerged. And I think certainly some of that has helped me be successful. But have I still seen that glass ceiling?
Wow.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So instead of focusing, well, not even focusing on that, just sort of ignoring it and saying, okay, it's just my job or even just my career. I'm just going to live with it, and letting it sort of take the passion out of what you really love to do. You turned it around and said, no, I'm going to even more so focus on how passionate I am about this and not worry about those other things, not ignore them, recognize them. Did you try to fight back in any way?
Sure.
Did you move maybe from one place to another because you felt like this was the way I'm going to be able to get the leadership roles that I want, and I also want to show other women that we don't have to just accept it? And how did that happen? It sounds so simple, but not easy.
Yes. Gosh, I mean, certainly, I have been pretty transparent and authentic in most of my career. Maybe less artfully so earlier in my career. And I've gotten to bring some more polish to that. But no question, I have, communicated on, my whys and why should I be the one, and why I think this would be a better play for the company, whether it's me or another woman. But I think ultimately, not only was it new opportunities, right? So maybe outside of the current job that I was in, I think that has been some of my biggest, career moves. But also, again, like looking at, why am I here, right? Why am I doing this role? And it is really important to me to be the person that I would want to look up to. And not to say that that's an easy road and that I haven't fallen on my face many times, but just remembering that, I think, has allowed me to balance between maybe just personal ambition with that underlying commitment, so that ultimately, as for example, in my current role as vice president of marketing, and I'm bringing new talent in, setting that example for what I think good leadership looks like versus where I think a lot of leadership sadly ends up in, which is just management. And how do we get to like the next KPI, Those things are ultimately important for the health and future of everyone's roles in the company, but we should be able to have, some joy and be able to make a difference regardless while you're doing all of that.
Wow. And for the last 3 years, your role involves working with the trade industries, which is still very male dominated fields.
Yes.
And so, did you find that you had to adjust your style or take on a new set of skills to be able to navigate that kind of environment?
So I would say absolutely yes. There are, I think, some skills to develop whenever I've been in a male dominated industry. This is not the first male dominated industry that I've been in. But I have had the pleasure of being in some more balanced industries as well. And I would say that the style of my communication does sometimes shift. And, I think I've heard, people of color talk about code switching sometimes when they talk about speaking with white people versus people of color. And sometimes I feel that way, even with interacting between the genders. A little bit of code switching and the way that and again, this is not 100%, but the way that I tend to find relating in the workplace with women and relating in the workplace with men. And I think at the end of the day, broadly speaking, my experience has been that building more of an actual relationship with women has been easier, but also, to be frank, the more that I've been open to maybe pushing a little bit more with my male colleagues, the more that I found that I think that they need that actually. And perhaps some of our gender bias in society, has trapped men in a certain way too, with how comfortable they feel about interacting with others in the workplace, regardless of gender. And that sometimes giving that space for a more personal human connection is something that seems needed even on the male side of the aisle, so to speak.
And these are some of the skills I'm sure that helped to lead the way for you to step into leadership roles, to be
Yes.
able to manage others. So I wonder, during all these years of your career, what were you balancing on the personal side? So we know that you took on this role with Now,
Yes.
and it was like your baby.
Yeah.
You told me earlier that you were married.
Yes.
So did your decisions that you made in your personal life, whether to get married, if your spouse had other opportunities that could have caused you to have to change things in your career, if you thought about children, if that was impacted in any way by your career, what were some of the personal choices you made, and how did work influence those?
Great question. I would say that I don't know that I ever had like a strong desire to have children, but I think it would be really inauthentic at the same time to say that work had zero impact on that decision. I think it was one of many factors that led to the decision to not want to ultimately have children. But being married too, you are still responsible to someone else. And the partnership just means that anytime I was looking to embark on one of these big deal, commitments, to just have a really frank conversation with my partner and understand from his perspective what this kind of time, outside of him and outside of taking care of the home was going to look like, and the impact on him. And is this something that, he could be at peace with for a few years? And ultimately, I'm very fortunate to just have an incredibly supportive husband. But all of those, they just absolutely have to be considerations. And I would expect the same from him if he were to choose some external endeavor as well.
Do you think you would have been able to take on the Now role if you had been a mother?
I sadly don't think I could have. I think I would have been likely even more committed to a human child, right, than my now baby.
Mhm.
And I don't think that I could have spent that amount of time, full-time job plus volunteer after hours, weekend hours, the across the state traveling and engagements, that kind of commitment with, children at home.
Mhm.
And that is tough to say.
Mhm. But it's the reality, right?
Yes.
We all have the same 24 hours. And so when that role wound down, you were there for just about 10 years.
Yeah.
Did something else come along? Did you find
Yes.
some new exploration of your own self or self-care? What took the place?
I, at that point, decided to run for state representative.
Oh, wow.
I didn't win, but it was truly like a grand adventure because that was a new level of leadership. Because it's one thing, no question, massive to lead an organization like the National Organization for Women at the state level. But it is another thing to put you and yourself alone as the face to a race and put yourself out there. And you're just representing yourself, right? And hopefully with the intention of representing your community, but truly you're putting your face, not this organization's face, on everything. And so it was an exercise of strength, really. And I say that because I think, and I don't know if other women feel this way, but I would say the strength occurred to me more at the end of it all, because at the beginning and going through it, I didn't always feel strong. I felt nervous and afraid and unsure, and am I doing this right? And I think it was only in retrospect that it was like, wow, look at all that I learned. Look at the impact that I made. And I then walked away from that saying, yeah, I need a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think some of those feelings that you describe, which are almost like imposter syndrome,
Yes.
are more common among women?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And does that hurt them in the workplace? And what are you doing anything actively, or do you recognize that in ways that helps empower other women?
so. I would say where I've come to is acceptance. It is superhuman to feel unsure about yourself. And I think when you're committed to living a big life, and that looks like so many different things, it doesn't necessarily mean changing the US Constitution. It could just mean making a difference in your community. It could mean, building something really special with your family. Whatever that looks like, just to be committed to something outside of yourself. I think there's always going to be those questions and, self-doubt. And I think just learning to recognize it and accept it and sort of say, yeah, thanks brain for sharing. But I know what I'm committed to. And as long as I'm still taking a step, even if it's baby steps, right? I feel like I'm doing the right thing, even if it feels uncomfortable.
And even moving past it, so you get to that point of
That's
strength.
Right. That's right.
And so women who are in that situation where they may be in that unsure place know that you will get to that point of strength, just like you did.
Yes, I think it's perfectly normal. And I've heard more than one women friend in my life say that those moments when you feel most uncomfortable, it's probably that growth opportunity that you should take.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you took the opportunity today to spend
you.
some time with us and share your story. And if you enjoyed our conversation or picked up some takeaways that might improve your life, remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. If you want to invest in a solution to the childcare crisis, you can reach out to me at diane@momsub.com about the MomSub Equity Crowdfunding Campaign, or connect with MomSub on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. That's MomSub, like a substitute mom. Remember, your choices are yours to define. Keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.